We are the CAT8, also known as the Community Assistance Team 8.
Is a group of Jain individuals and professionals
who are assisting the community at large
during the COVID-19 crisis.
CAT8 began just before the COVID-19 crisis,
when it held a can challenge,
where children created iconic monuments
using cans of food,
raised some 3 tons of canned foods,
enough supply for 4 months,
for the Watford Food Bank,
run by the Atul Trust.
During the COVID-19 crisis,
CAT8 is helping the elderly, the vulnerable,
those in isolation and key workers.
With meals, essential shopping,
help with medicine collection,
and someone to talk to
whilst coping with isolation.
CAT8 has lined up
a series of webinars.
In addition, we have created a helpline
for individuals and businesses
that need guidance
on the various government schemes.
And the topics of the webinars.
CAT8 is working with
or supporting various organizations,
including Go Dharmic,
Sevate,
Navnath,
SCVP,
One Jain,
the Trussell Trust,
and working with many volunteers.
CAT8 is the newest network fiber,
connecting the community. Our speaker today is Atul Shah, who is a solicitor who ran a private practice in Harrow for over 25 years and is now a consultant solicitor. His clients range from individuals to top corporations. His approach is always with pragmatism, honesty, and service to clients being the first and paramount consideration. He brings a wealth of experience in areas which include will making, probate, powers of attorney, estate planning, social care, landlord and tenant and court work. So over to Atul. Thank you.
Thank you, Romit, for that lovely introduction. And my thanks to the audience today for taking the time and attending today's presentation. I hope you are all keeping safe and are well. During the presentation, if you have any questions, use the chat button to let the moderators know so they can make a note of those questions. And at the end, we will have a question and answer session. Today's topic is extremely complex and technical. I have attempted to simplify it as much as I can. It means it is generic, but obviously it is a good start. It is not designed to replace proper, good, correct advice, which you must always take when you need help. In my journey, I have come across a number of people needing help in sorting out their social care. And I found that in most cases, it is because the people are not aware of where to start. And I think after today's presentation, I hope you will be more aware of what is required and where to start. After the presentation, we will have a question and answers session, and we have 2 more panelists who will join me, and I hope you make use of that as well. Now let's start. In today's presentation,
Atul, can you put it on slide show mode, please? Thank you.
In today's presentation, we are going to look at social care expenses. Now, in order to understand what this topic is about, we need to go back to the basics. We need to know what is social and what is care. And that is what we will start with today. And again, remember that it is not designed to be legal advice, but it is a start for you to become aware. And obviously, you obtain proper advice when required. Now, when we talk about care, what does it mean? In my mind, to me, it means practical things, support and provision of help. It may be as simple as getting out of the bed, cooking, washing, dressing, cleaning yourself. It can be even not physical, but mental. It can be avoiding loneliness and depression, or it can be very personal, going to the toilet or helping you brush teeth. Or it may be you need some special equipment or you need to adapt the home where you live. And it can be for a short while on a regular basis, or it can be full-time in a care home. Many of us will need care. It may be due to mental challenges or physical challenges. By making this presentation, I hope that you start becoming aware, start planning, start thinking, and look at what help is available and spread the word. Now, when we talk about care, we are looking at either medical care or social care. Medical care, in my view, is where it is provided by registered nurses, and social care is where it is provided by care assistants. But unfortunately, the boundary between the two is blurred. It's difficult to determine. Sometimes you may feel it is medical care, but the assessor or the council or the medical consultant might feel otherwise. Now, why do we need to differentiate between medical care and social care? The answer is very simple. One, it is the cost of it. And two, who pays for it? Care is expensive if you look at the worst case scenario. So it is important to understand the basics and find your way through. Now, because care is expensive, successive governments have not been able to address reforming and funding of care provision. Care needs are increasing, fewer people are receiving public funded care, the actual spending on care is decreasing, but the needs are increasing. So how does families, governments, local councils cope? They might make cuts in their budgets, they might reduce services, but what is also becoming important is tightening the interpretation of eligibility criteria for care. Now, that is an important point I will mention a bit later. And when we talk about care, we have to decide what does it mean. So we look at the starting position. If you look at care, care is help that you need when you can't do things yourself. So this is more about needs. And it is important to get a needs assessment done. This is where you have to ask yourself, I used to do these things, but I can't do it. So how am I going to get help? And that is done through a needs assessment. It is free and it is based on your needs. It is not based on what else there might be out there, purely on needs. Now, how does it start? When does it begin to look at needs assessment? Now, if you feel that you can't do things or you're not able to do as much as before, then maybe the assessment will be in the home setting when you are at home. Or say you have ended up in the hospital and you are ready to discharge. then again the question arises, are you able to go back to home and do what you used to do before? So the assessment for needs can be in your own home or in the hospital just before discharge. Generally, hospitals can't discharge patients until they have done an assessment to make sure that the patient can stay at home or in a safe environment. And in usual cases, the assessment is done by the local authority. Now, what does it involve? A report is prepared by a care professional, setting out the level and the type of support. Setting out the level and type of support. Do you need somebody coming in for, say, 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, or twice a day? Or is it you need somebody in the house longer? Or is it that it is too much that you need to go into a home? Or type of support, which is, do you need some aids which will help you get on and do what you need to do by yourself? Or is it adopting your house? Or is it again too much, so you need to go into a care home? So it depends on different things. But it is done by a professional who looks at all these things, asks you questions, and then comes to a decision. And he prepares or she prepares a report. So before a care needs assessment, my suggestion is to sit down, close your eyes and think, what do you do every day that you are not able to do? Or you can do it with difficulty. Now, when the report is prepared for care, then it will obviously depend on what it will lead to, which is expenditure. Just like if you're going to build a building extension in your home, you will prepare a plan, you'll prepare a report with the architect, and that will determine how much it's going to cost. In the same way, a care plan is prepared, and then that will determine how much it is going to cost. Now, we talk about care in basic terms. We have discussed in basic terms. We look at care in basic terms, but for the local authority, they have to ask themselves 3 questions. You don't need to worry too much about these questions, but this is what you need to fit yourself into. And if you look at those 3 questions, the first one is, do you have care and needs as a result of physical or mental condition? In other words, simply, do you need care and support? And are you unable to achieve 2 or more things or goals that you do normally? For example, cooking, going to the toilet, getting out of the bed. And thirdly, is there or likely to be significant impact on your well-being because you can't do it? Now, what are the things we look at when we talk about care? And these are the ones that I can come up with, but the list is not exhausting. It's not exhaustive. There may be other things which are there, which you feel are important, and it is for you to raise them. Eating properly, looking after personal hygiene, going to the toilet, dress yourself, be safe at home, keeping home clean and safe, seeing friends and family, using services in the area, taking medication regularly and safely, getting out of bed. Those are the ones which you come across every day. And you've got the other extreme, which is you can't get out of bed, period. And what you have to look at is how many of these you can or you can't do. And when you look at that, you don't just look at, I can't do it, but it takes longer to do it. Or yes, you can do it, but it is very painful. There's no point in trying to do something which will take you 2-3 hours when the task should have taken you, say, 5 minutes. So it's not just about can't do it, but it also includes can do it, but with difficulty. Now, how do you prepare for your care assessment or needs assessment? I always recommend that you have somebody with you, moral support, or even to help you understand what is going on around you. And the person might also put in more suggestions. So it's always good to have somebody with you. The second thing, what we touched before, is think beforehand what you have been doing and make a list of things you can't do or you can only do it with difficulty. And you ask yourself, I need someone to do this or not. I won't worry if you need help. I won't say that you should feel ashamed. Ask for help, and the help is available. And as I've said before, it is not about just I can't do it, but it's also yes, you can do it, but with difficulty. So even if you feel that you can do it, but you are struggling, again, consider an assessment. Now, we've looked at care in a bit more detail, and we know that there are two types, medical care and social care. Now let's look at medical care before we go to social care. Medical care is where you are looking at a substantial need for medical help, where you need a nurse present constantly. And as I've said before, the line between medical care and social care is blurred. Now, the good thing about medical care is if the assessment says you need medical care, it is usually paid by the NHS. You don't have to pay for it. It is not means tested. They don't look at your finances. And you can have a situation where it is partly medical care and partly social care, in which case the NHS might say we will fund partially rather than in full. And there are a lot of loose buzzwords around which they use: continuing health care, funded nursing care, registered nursing care contribution, funded care, nursing care. I won't worry too much about those words. Stick to what you have to do. Let the buzzwords be on paper. Now, because it's funded by the NHS, I don't want to spend too much time in this session about medical care. But if you have any questions relating to medical care, or whether it's medical care or social care, you can raise it in the chat and we will try and help. Now, this is where our presentation really hits hard. Social care. Now, it is not free. And what I mean by that, it is means tested. Either it's paid by yourself from your own money, or by a local authority, or a mixture of two. And this is why we have a lot of problems, a lot of controversy, a lot of discussions on social care in this country. And I said before, there is temptation to determine that needs are such that it is social care rather than medical care. And thereby it becomes means tested, and in which in turn means you can end up paying from your assets. So going back, it is important to establish whether it's means tested or social care. Now, when we look at social care, the assessment for finances, the financial assessment, is carried out by the local authority, and you don't have to book it, and it follows a needs assessment. It is free, just like the needs assessment. And it determines whether the council is going to pay for it, you are paying for it, or a mixture. Now, what happens during a financial assessment? The financial assessment officer from the local authority will visit the person needing assessment and ask about income, earnings, cash, savings, property, usually anything of monetary value, anything having value. If you have joint assets, then part of it is taken into account, depending on how much your share of the joint assets is. And they will look at not just what you have here, but also abroad. And obviously, if values are not known, valuations have to be done. Now, usually they don't need to know about value of possessions. Possessions meaning clothes, furniture, things which usually doesn't have much value. Now, don't go out and spend your money or give it away, because that can jeopardize your assessment. It won't work to spend money or give away property just before the financial assessment. In any event, you shouldn't give away your assets because you may need them later. The assessment can ask you about things that you used to own, which is why also you shouldn't give away things and then expect the council to help. 2 points to bear in mind. When you're dealing with joint assets, it is not always owned 50-50 by the other co-owner. It can be in different proportions. So you need to establish how much of that joint asset is actually yours. And the second point is, in the assessment, they only look at your assets. They only look at what you have, not anybody else. In terms of the actual calculations, in terms of actual rates, we don't want to look at it at the moment. We are looking at the overall picture. There are different calculations for care home and home at care, care at home. So if you need care in the home where you are, then there's a different calculation. If you need to go into a care home, then the calculation is different. Now, the biggest asset most families own is their own home where they live. Is it or is it not taken into account? Well, that depends on whether you're going to get care in the house where you live or you're going to go into a care home. If you're going to live in your own home and you need somebody coming in to help you with your care, then your own home is not taken into account. Now, let me stop at this point. If you are a person who needs help but are afraid that you may end up losing your home, why not consider getting some help by getting carers in, so that you don't need to have the home where you live taken into account. On the other hand, if you have to go into a care home, the value of your own home is only taken into account after 12 weeks if you move into the care home permanently. So after 12 weeks, if the move is permanent. But that doesn't apply if you still have somebody staying in the house where you're moving out of. Certain types of people can mean that the house is not taken into account. Let me give you some examples. Say you are a couple and the first one needs to go into a home, but the second one remains in your own home. In that case, your own home is not taken into account. Or a very good example that I've come across recently, where a carer, a daughter, sells her property, moves in with dad, who is living otherwise alone, and looks after the dad for about 6-7 years. And then a time comes where she can't look after dad, and the dad has to go into a home. And she managed to convince the local authority that the home should not, the home where the dad was staying should not be taken into account, because she's now staying in it and she was a former carer. In that case, the home wasn't taken into account. The local authority has power to choose not to take into account the capital value of the home. So I wouldn't worry too much when you're dealing with your own home. Yes, there will be time when your own home is taken into account, but not always. So always find ways in which you can still get care, but your own home is not taken into account. Certain important points that we need to mention. A full disclosure is always required of all finances of the person needing care. If you do not disclose everything, it can come back and bite you. If the local council thinks that the person needing care has reduced wealth on purpose, it might stop the person getting any type of financial help. What do you mean by reduce? It may mean giving away assets. It may be even gambling away the assets deliberately. What is important is to look at the timing of giving away or reducing the assets, and whether you knew that you are going to need medical care or social care or care of any sort. The other point to bear in mind is, doesn't matter how much national insurance contributions you have made. National insurance contributions are not taken into account. Now, there are two buzzwords to remember. Savings less than 23,250 or 14,250. Now, if the savings are less than 14,250, then all the care, social care, is provided by the council at its own cost. If it is between 14,250 and 23,250, then the council can ask you to make a contribution. And if it is more than 23,250, then usually councils don't pay for it. But these are overview points. So obviously each case will depend on its own, and we need to do a calculation as and when a case comes forward. Now, what if you don't agree with the financial assessment? You have the right to complain. You do that first to the local authority using their formal complaints procedure. If you are still not happy, then there is an independent person called Ombudsman who you can approach, and the details are available on the website. And they will make an independent assessment of your complaint. You do have some rights to a free needs and financial assessment, right to decide how the personal budget is spent. So once a needs assessment is done, once a financial assessment is done, and the report says that the expenditure available for your needs is say X amount, then you do have involvement in terms of what and how that budget should be spent. If you have to go into a care home, you do have some right where you can choose which home to live in. If a carer is required, Either the local authority can arrange it and pay for it, or they give you money and you arrange the carer. My own suggestion is to take the money and choose your own carer, because then if you use the same carer or carers, then there is some normality in your life. You don't have a different person coming into your home at different times each day. And you have the right to ask for help with care, to require the local authority to fund care for person who passes the needs and means test. It is important to know your rights because they'll be useful to you. Now, I do accept that sometimes you feel confused. Where do I start? What do I do? Who do I go to? And yes, you can always approach the social services department of the council. But at the same time, there are experts out there, advisors out there, who may provide their service either free or upon paying a fee to help you advise on personal budgets or how much money is available to you and how to spend it, on assisting you with your needs preparation, needs assessment, helping you with making appeals, taking advice from a lawyer, or even advice from occupational therapist as to what you can do in what time, at what frequency, or is it possible at your age to do it? Or even get somebody to speak on your behalf, an advocate, somebody who can speak and present what you are saying. And it's always wise to look at these things beforehand. Now, let's say care means you have to go into a home. It may be different type of care, and you have different types of homes depending on your care needs. You can have a nursing home where they have registered nurses and the emphasis is on medical care. You have residential homes where the emphasis is on providing you assistance so that you can get on with the daily routine, get on with your life. But you may not need medical care. And you have what is known as respite homes where you can go there temporarily so that the carers who are looking after you at home have some time on their own for themselves. And you can have hospices. So I have put down there on the slide different types of homes, but sometimes you can have a home which provides all the different variety of care. And you have to look at types of care homes in your area. What is available, what is not available, to what extent. What would I look for when I talk about choosing the right home? First thing I would look at is obviously the CQC website to see if there's anything reported on the home you are thinking of. CQC is the regulatory body which looks and inspects and regulates homes like this. Are there any adverse reports about the care home? Are you happy with what has been reported? There might be one-off situation which has been reported, but you are still happy to go to that care home, which is fine. It's up to you. What does the care cost in the home that you're going to? It is important to know that if you go into a care home and the council is willing to pay an X amount of money, you can always top it up to get a better home, a better service. Sometimes the council will say to you, this is the care home we have in mind, but you might not agree. And you can try and convince the council of a different care home that you want to go to. And you can prepare a report saying, look, this home is better for me because it's near my son's workplace, or it's easier for my friends to come and visit me, or any other reason that you can think of. Do they cover, a question you can ask is, do they cover residential care only, or is it also with nursing care in case you need nursing care in the future? And do they cover care until end of life? Not all of them do all these things. If type of food is important to you, you can ask questions about that. If you are religious minded, you can ask questions about that. You'll also look at what sort of activities they have, if you are able to do and you want to enjoy some activities. What are the visiting times, and how far is it from the family that you have, or friends you have, or what languages do they speak in the care home. So these are the things you will look at if you are choosing the home. And if you want to convince the council of your choice, then it is always better to have a really good report prepared to justify your choice, and it comes in handy. Now let's look at some examples. Examples vary because each case is different. And these are some of the live examples that I've come across in my time. A shopkeeper, 55, had a stroke whilst in the shop. The shop was open, falls down, becomes unconscious. He's taken into hospital, and although after a while he becomes conscious, his physical abilities have reduced. There are challenges in his life now. And two choices were considered. One was full-time care in the home where he was, or going into a care home. And they decided that going into the care home was better. Now, the points that arose from that was he could not come out of the bed quite easily, so he needed care. In coming out of bed, he needed help with brushing his teeth, going to the toilet. He needed help with doing physical exercise as much as he could. And the second example we look at is a couple living at home. Husband is 65, goes into hospital where cancer is diagnosed. And in the hospital again, he can't come out of the bed. And he's been told that that is the case that is going to be permanent because of the type of cancer he has. In that case, the only choice was going into a care home. And the family made sure that it was a care home which had nursing care as well and end-of-life care as well. We have a couple who is 75, living at home, but there's no physical disabilities or challenges that they face. But the husband has started to wander off out of the house at night, suggesting mental challenges. He can't even remember his own home address. It is still part of care provision because he needs help with his mental conditions. And this is one area which is becoming more controversial, becoming more common, where a person doesn't have any physical needs, but are failing mentally. Their mind is getting affected or getting challenged, and help is required. What the couple have done is they've had help at home to deal with making things safe at home and making sure that the husband has some support. But they are aware that if this condition deteriorates, then he can end up in a care home. More importantly, because the wife may not be able to look after the husband as they grow older. The next example is where we have elderly couple in their 80s, no underlying medical conditions. Both are mentally fit, but age is catching up. They physically can't do a lot of things because of age. In that case, they are still happy to stay in the home where they live, and the council has agreed to pay for carers coming in to help with some of the things in the house. And they're happy with that. Now, when we talk about care, it is not just physical care. It is also mental care. And the mental care part is becoming much more common, much more difficult as well, because in the public's mind, in the people's mind, they might feel that that is medical care and therefore should be paid by the NHS, but not always. Many times it is treated as social care, which in turn means it is means tested, and which in turn means that you can end up paying towards that. Now, we have looked at the slides, we have looked at an overview of care, and in particular social care. Now, when does care fit into your life? Sometimes the questions of care are dealt with on their own when the need arises, either in the hospital or at home. Or usually it is triggered when you are making a will or doing a power of attorney or doing tax planning, where the professional also raises with you that what are you going to do in the future if these things happen, where your care needs increase. And more importantly, how are you going to fund for it? What are you going to do now so that later on you don't have issues? That comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you for being here today and listening to what I have to say. We will soon start the questions and answer session. I'll be joined by two panelists. Let me pass you back to Rumi.